Hare Krishna, everyone. A warm welcome and very good evening on those beautiful evening which we are seeing in Pune. A beautiful sunset is happening. And this day, now we are going to discuss a very important chapter in our Gita Essence series, which is chapter 13, the consciousness. Now, before we move to chapter 13, a quick recap on chapter 12, which we discussed day before yesterday, Saturday, which is the spiritual qualities. If you remember the acronym, can you please type it on YouTube? As to make sure, right, we have a good interaction going on. So the chapter 12, which is spiritual qualities, titled as spiritual qualities, talks about how bhakti is the best way, and it also talks about the various gradation of a devotional life. What Krishna clearly mentioned in the chapter 12, although he is equal to everyone is like son of hers, but all the devotees, dear devotees who serve his whole his or her whole life in the service of Krishna are more dearer to him. And then we conclude that bhakti is not is the best one, but it's also the easiest process to follow. But there are very challenges in bhakti. And now we learn in chapter 13 how one cannot be determined in the bhakti. How is consciousness got contaminated? Because just like a child born, it's pure, is without any ill thought, in ill process, or any evil thought. But it's similar to like a soul. When soul is there, is pure. But when it comes into contamination, material contamination, then it got corrupted. So in this chapter now Prabhuji is going to discuss about the various consciousness level that we have. So now without any doing without any taking much time, let me hand it over to our stream speaker, His Grace Madan Sundar Prabhu, to take on the chapter 13 journey. Hare Krishna Prabhuji, a warm welcome.
Hare Krishna Shikapu, thank you. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So once again, we welcome each and every one of you for this another session of Gita Essence. We are now on the third and the final section of Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita has 18 chapters, which are divided into sections of 3 sections of 6 chapters. The first section is called as Karma Yoga, where more or less, who am I? I'm a spirit soul of this body, and how to realize our identity as a spirit soul and revive our eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord. For that purpose, different yoga processes were discussed: Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, and ultimately Bhakti Yoga, which Krishna concluded to be the best. Yoginam api sarvesham mad gatenantar atmanah Shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yuktatamo matah. After establishing who am I, how to revive our relationship with the Supreme Lord, now from the 7th chapter onwards until the 12th chapter, there is a description or discussion about Supreme Personality of Godhead. We're trying to revive our relationship with the Supreme Lord. It becomes easier or it makes sense only if we have knowledge about the Supreme Person. Therefore, from 7th chapter onwards, Lord Shri Krishna says, Arjuna tat shrunu. Now you hear from me so that you cultivate knowledge. With knowledge comes faith. And when you become steady, then you can progress and revive your relationship with the Supreme Lord. Therefore, from text chapter number 7 to chapter number 12, Lord Shri Krishna focused on the principles of Bhakti Yoga, which are primarily Shravanam and Kirtanam. Shravanam and Kirtanam are the means of reviving our relationship with the Lord through the process of hearing about His glories and singing His glories in the form of Kirtan. So that was the middle six chapters where Bhakti Yoga was established as the highest path once again, and how to practice the path of Bhakti Yoga, wherein the opulences of the Lord Shri Krishna were described, and how to attain the perfect stage of life at the end of life. Prayena Kale was also established, or the law of transmigration was established like that. And the sweet relationship between the Lord and His devotees were described as we learned in the ninth chapter. These are just a high level, descriptions of the things that we have discussed. Now we come to the final section, which is called as Jnana Yoga. Now, Jnana Yoga refers to the transcendental knowledge of the wisdom, which helps us become detached from the material world and become attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, why it is essential or why it is important? I would say this is a very, very important discussion, although I know it had required a little bit of your patience, or a lot of patience. From last 2+ weeks, we have been having continuously evening program, and all of you are coming. That's a big, big commitment. But hang on, do not get demoralized. When would Bhagavad Gita would end? Why it is so long and all that? It's a very, very important subject matter which we're about to get into it. Because think about it, all of us, our heart is filled with all kinds of material desires. By the association of saintly people, we may develop some aspiration, some desire to know about Lord, to serve the Lord. But the nature of the world is that it is filled with so much temptations, so many distractions, particularly in the age of information and technology. We hold simple, small gadgets which can really, really distract us from the goal of our life. So, in this time and place and circumstances, unless we properly cultivate knowledge, unless we understand where our good fortune lies, and if we continue to cultivate our material aspirations, is actually taking us in the wrong direction. Unless we have the clear understanding, will not be able to become steady on the path of spiritual life. And that is what this Jnana Yoga section is, which helps us to cultivate detachment from material aspirations and cultivate attachment or cultivate spiritual aspirations or attachment towards Krishna. To begin with, the very first chapter of this section, which is 13th chapter, we have titled as Consciousness. In this chapter, once again, I would say, I just can't describe how glorious Bhagavad Gita is. I'm falling short of words, but just tell you, such a profound, profound wisdom is given in this chapter. Actually, Srila Prabhupada describes in the purport that this chapter, 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which discusses 6 prominent questions: Purusha, Prakriti, Kshetra, Kshetragya, Jnanam, Gneyam. And Srila Prabhupada describes that these 6 subject matters forms the constituents of the Vedic scriptures. After studying the whole vast Vedic scriptures, the answers that one will get, that person can get the same answer by studying the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Or in other words, studying the 12th chapter and then finally studying the 13th chapter, he'll be able to get the answers of the 6 fundamental questions, as I said, Purush, Prakriti, Kshetra, Kshetra, Jnanam, Gneyam, which forms the constituents of all Vedic scripture. This is what we are supposed to learn by studying the Vedic scriptures. So, before we get into it, to put these questions in a more sense which we can relate to, is, have you ever wondered who is the real enjoyer? Although our condition of life, our condition of our mind is, we tend to think, I am the real enjoyer. I want to enjoy. But do we really succeed? Do we really enjoy life? And even if, for how long? Our senses, as we grow old, becomes dwindle. They they lose their potency. And even if our senses are strong, yet we do not have resources with us to enjoy forever. Things like that. Second, we're going to discuss on these subject matters today. Why do bad things happen to good people? All of you have heard about victim mentality. A lot of time people say, I'm a victim, I'm a victim. So this chapter debunks this victim consciousness, where in this chapter we learn there's nothing like victim. We are the doer and creator of our destiny. What is happening with us today, we cannot blame it on anyone else. We'll discuss that in this particular chapter. Third is, where is my freedom? Am I really a free living entity like we are in India? India got independence in 1947. Can anyone really say he is a free living entity, a free citizen? How many of you pay taxes? How many of you pay toll taxes? Different kinds of bills and everything. If you have a travel from one country to another country, you need a passport, you need visa. There are so many rules and regulations, restrictions. On top of it, this living entity called as spirit soul has been caught up into this metal body, which is itself in one way a place of suffering. So where is our freedom? We cannot do or we cannot get what we want. There's so many restrictions. So there'll be a discussion about the subject of freedom. The fourth will be the three doers. This subject matter we have discussed before also in fifth chapter once again. Who actually does? Who performs the action? And who deserves the credit? Prakriti kriyamani guna karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudatma kartamiti manate. Third chapter 27 verse Krishna says, everything is done by the Prakriti, but the living entity thinks, I am the doer. That idea is debunked once again in this particular chapter. And many other questions will be addressed. I'm just raising some questions here. What is the purpose of this huge creation? Everything has a purpose. This is a slider. You shift the slides. This is a mouse. I have a laptop in front of me. There's a camera. There's a TV. Everything, if you look around yourself also, everything has a purpose, isn't it? There is a fan, there's an AC, there's a tube light. Everything has got a purpose to fulfill. So my question to all of you is, let's begin with this question. Maybe where I can try to ask this question and see if you have an answer. According to you, what is the purpose of this whole creation? What would you answer if a question is asked to you like this? It's been a while since I've interacted with you, so let's start with that. Those of you online, I believe all of you are online now, on YouTube, I believe. So why don't you type in your answer just to see what would you say is the purpose of this creation? I'm just kind of taking a look if in case anyone is typing comments. Would I get to see the comments here? All right. Oh, there is a delay. Okay, so looks like there's a delay in a stream. So it will be a time for me to get to see what's your comment. But you can continue writing your comments. I'll move on. We'll give this answer. We'll discuss this answer when we proceed. And once for all, once again, a discussion on the subject matter of what is the vision of Transcendentalists. How a spiritualist looks at this whole world, the whole creation, and how does he live his life. Very, very important. So I guess we have given you a good enough introduction, hopefully created some excitement and curiosity within you to know about the subject matter. So let's proceed ahead with the acronym for the 13th chapter. The acronym for the 13th chapter is given by Sutapa Prabhu from Bhaktivedanta Manor. I have given, we are using the acronyms given by him. So here, the acronym is WISE. So let's take a look, where W stands for wise questions, where in verse number 1 to 7, this section is covered. Primarily in the first verse of the 13th chapter, Arjuna is asking 6 questions. And Arjuna says, Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Kshetram Kshetrakya Evacha Etad Veditum Ichhami Jnanam Gneyam Chakeshava. O Keshava, can you please answer me? Tell me, Prakriti Purush Kshetra Kshetragya Jnanam Gneyam. What are all these things? Please help me understand this. Another chapter, another set of questions by Arjuna. And Lord Shri Krishna is still patiently hearing to all his questions and trying to answer. Arjuna wants to know about six things. So I'm giving the equivalent in English. Prakriti means the material world or the nature. Purusha means the enjoyer. And Prakriti means which is enjoyed. That's the relationship between Purusha and Prakriti. Kshetra refers to the field of activities. Kshetragya, who knows the field of activity. Jnanam, which means the process of knowledge. And Gnayam refers to the object of knowledge, which means what we are supposed to be knowing about, learning about. That is Gnayam. And how to learn about, what are the prerequisite, what is the process of knowledge, that is called as Jnanam. So let's take a look what Krishna gives an answer. We'll be quick with this, some other things, and we'll go in details in some of the sections. So very first thing that has been discussed here is about Kshetra and Kshetragya in up to the verse number 7. So Kshetra and Kshetragya. What is Kshetra? Lord Shri Krishna describes in the second verse. Kshetra means field of activity, which means the body. Body is said to be karma bhumi because through the body we are creating karma, we are creating reactions. That is called as Kshetragya. Kshetra. Kshetragya, Gnya means knower. The knower of the Kshetra is called as Kshetragya. And who is that? That is the soul, the knower of the body. However, this chapter clarifies there is not one knower. There are actually two knowers of the body. One is called the spirit soul, other is called as the supreme soul or the super soul. And then Krishna talks about what is jnana. In the third verse, Krishna says, perfect knowledge of the constitution of the body, the constitution of the individual soul, and the constitution of the super soul in terms of Vedic literature is called as jnana. To know the self, to know the Lord is called as jnana. Everything else is jnana. So what is the meaning of the body as a field of activity and the living entity and the super soul as being the knower of the body? Prabhupada gives a very beautiful example, analogy. Just like the farmer, he sows the seed on his farmland, agricultural land. Agricultural land becomes a kshetra where he is performing his activities. Similarly, a living entity sows the seed of karma in the body or through the body because he uses the body to perform action. You getting a point? So living entity knows the body. Just like a farmer can only know or will only know about his land, not about all the lands in the state. Similarly, the difference between the soul and the super soul is the soul, as an example is given of a farmer, like a farmer knows about the body where he's performing activities or sowing the seed of karma. But just like in the case of a farmer knows his field, but the king of the state, he knows about all the fields because he is the actual controller, he is the actual ruler. Similarly, the difference between the soul and super soul, which is given right in this section, is super soul knows about all the fields. Why? As Krishna says in the 5th verse of 7th chapter, what is that? The 5th verse of the 7th chapter, earth, water, fire, air, ether, bhumir, apo, nalo, vayu, kammano, buddhirevacha. Krishna said these are my energies. And so that's the point here, is described the difference between soul and super soul through the example of a king and farmer. Just like the king knows about all the land, similarly, super soul knows about all and everyone. That is the point. So the citizen or the farmer is a secondary controller, king is the primary controller. Similarly, a living entity is a secondary controller of the body, whereas Krishna, the super soul, is the primary controller of this body. And in the remaining verses of this first section, Lord Shri Krishna then describes the different constituents of this material creation, or in other words, which makes up the Kshetra. And Lord Shri Krishna lists down 24 material elements. Just like, we have 5 knowledge acquiring senses: eyes, nose, tongue, ear, sense of touch. Similarly, there are 5 working senses. Then there are 5 sense objects. And then we have five Mahabhuta: earth, water, fire, air, ether. The subtle senses, mind, intelligence, false ego. Like this, it all makes to 24 elements, which is being described here. And that is how the Kshetra is designed or made up of. So, this is a little analytical subject which Krishna explains about how Kshetra, this body, is created of 24 elements. After describing about Kshetra and Kshetragya, when Arjuna heard this, he began to ponder. He thought, my dear Lord, how do I cultivate all this knowledge? How do I actually realize all this thing? So, very interesting. Krishna have already defined knowledge means to know Kshetra, body, soul, and the super soul, Kshetra and Kshetragya. But generally, it is as seen people who are entangled in bodily consciousness, for them to believe, forget about understanding it, to believe there is a spirit soul, to believe there is a super soul and the Lord itself is very difficult, what to speak about understanding it. And moreover, even our day to day experience teaches us that I am the controller of the body. Why in then Bhagavad-Gita saying we are the second controller? Therefore, this section is very important. How do we actually realize that I am a spirit soul? How do we actually realize the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? And that is why now comes the second section of the 13th chapter, where I stands for items of knowledge, where jnanam is being discussed, which means the process of knowledge, how to understand spiritual subject matter. To hear and know is one thing, but to realize it, for that we have to follow a process, and that is what is being described here. So, how these verses that we're going to look into it now, from verse number 8 to 12, this verse describes how a living entity can entangle himself from the Kshetra, or how a spirit soul can disentangle itself from the body. So, to begin with, we're going to speak about the subject of knowledge. Do we have a poll in case ready? So, the poll is, if I ask you, what is knowledge? What would you answer? Is it about gaining knowledge? Is it about memorization? Is it about good character and practical behavior, or all of the above? I hope you are able to see the poll question on the screen, so you may give your answers accordingly. And considering the delay, I will proceed ahead. So, what is knowledge? Knowledge is not only about information and memorization, but rather about exemplary personal character and practical behavior. So, in the poll question, the third answer was the correct answer. What does it mean? Unfortunately, in today's world, the education we are given in, there is no value of character. There is no classes over on morality and integrity, or there's no subject which talks about building up of character. There's a lot of focus given on acquiring. There's a lot of focus given on memorizing, possessing at any cost. In other words, in today's world, the emphasis on competence but not on character. So here, in this particular section, Krishna mentions the process of acquiring knowledge. The prerequisite is to cultivate good character. Without good character, one cannot understand spiritual subject matter. And actually, that is the goal of the education. To give you an example, this is a letter written by a survivor of the Hitler's concentration camps. Hitler from Germany, who played a key role in starting the Second World War. So he had created a concentration camps where he was literally butchering down the Jews at that point of time. And one of the survivor, almost after a decade, he wrote a letter about the state of education, modern education, and he said, "What level of education are we giving, or what have we created a human being into by our education that we're giving to them?" Because the people who were performing live experiments, I mean, the Jews were so brutally tortured. We can't go into details of it, but just to give one example, Hitler was really into creating more destructive weapons, and also finding out newer and newer ways to treat the soldiers, the wounded soldiers. So So there were a lot of medical experiments being done. Now, in a modern science, all the medical experiments are done on animals to begin with, particularly poor mice, which has to suffer the most for the safety of humans. Most of the experiments are done on the rat, and then medicine comes for the human. Unfortunately, in this case, Hitler had passed an order where the doctors, the educated people of the society, were actually performing live experiments on the bodies of the Jews without anesthesia. So they are trying out a new surgery method for surgery. They'll put a patient, not a patient, was made a patient onto the bed, hospital bed, tie him up with the ropes, and then with being alive, fully conscious, they'll tear open his different parts of the body. And he was one of the person who had gone through that trauma. So he said, what state of education, what kind of education are we giving to this modern education system, where the educated people have become worse than animals, where people have lost faith in humanity, where people are fighting over such a petty issue on I am of this religion and that religion, and they're torturing another man, another human being to such an extreme suffering. Is this what education is all about? Was a very valid question raised. Once again, education is not only about competence, but it's about character. For example, if I ask you a question, according to you, who can understand Bhagavad-Gita better? A drunkard PhD scholar, or maybe a 12th fail, but a man of character? Sorry, I don't have this up on the slide to show you. But if I ask you a question, according to you, who can understand Bhagavad Gita better? A drunkard PhD scholar, or maybe a 12th fail, but a man of character, integrity, and has a strong faith on the Lord? According to you, who can? You can type in your answers wherever you are listening to. So, question comes: who can understand Bhagavad Gita? There's so many commentaries written, and everyone claims to know the message of Bhagavad Gita. However, they delete or erase the main personality of Bhagavad Gita, that is Krishna and Arjuna, and claim to know Bhagavad Gita. There are a lot of scholars who study, the Vedic scholars, Sanskrit scholars who study Bhagavad Gita, and they give different conclusions of Bhagavad Gita. When Krishna says, Sarva Dharman Parityajamam Ekam Sharanam Vaja, they say, no, that is not what Krishna meant. Krishna meant, just follow your heart, surrender to your mind, whatever your mind says, follow it. So you don't need a Bhagavad Gita to tell you that. People are doing far better without studying Bhagavad Gita. Isn't it? Everyone is busy following their mind. Why you need to study Bhagavad Gita just to learn this thing that you need to follow your mind? So anyways, so who can understand Bhagavad Gita? So the question is of discussion about caliber versus character. So in modern education or in success or in our academics, success depends on caliber, but not on character. However, spiritual subject matter have very less to do with caliber. Very less to do with caliber. They have a lot to do with character. To give you an example, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was on the tour of South India, and I believe at Srirangam was the place where he came across a Brahmana who was holding a Bhagavad Gita upside down. And he was crying and crying and crying while flipping through the pages of Bhagavad Gita. How will you read a book which is upside down? And he's flipping the pages and he's crying. And the people around him were laughing. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw, he was a little intrigued. What's going on? People are laughing. Brahmana is crying. On top of it, he has a book upside down. What's the whole mystery about? So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu walked up to that Brahman and asked, my dear sir, why are you crying? And what are you trying to read? He said, I'm trying to read Bhagavad Gita. My spiritual master ordered me to read Bhagavad Gita. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, but my dear sir, you're holding Bhagavad Gita upside down. How are you reading? And then the man said, I'm so sorry. Actually, I'm an illiterate. I cannot read. Just because my spiritual master asked me to every day I open a copy of Bhagavad Gita, because I'm illiterate. I don't know what is the top, what is the bottom, whichever way I feel like I hold it. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, you don't know how to read, you are illiterate, yet you're holding a copy of Bhagavad Gita. All right, that was the order of spiritual master. But my dear sir, why are you crying? And you know what that Brahmana said? Whenever I hold a copy of Bhagavad Gita, the scene of battlefield at Kurukshetra comes to my mind. And what was the scene of the battlefield of Kurukshetra? Where Krishna ऐश्वरस्य समाग्रस्य वीर्यस्य यशशाश्रिय ज्ञानं वैराग्यश्चैव संभागयितं. Vishnu Puran says about the six opulences of the Lord. Brahma says, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Sarva Karana Karanam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who Brahma worships, that Supreme Personality of Godhead became a charioteer of Arjuna. Knowing this, when this picture dawns into my consciousness, I cannot hold on to my tears. My consciousness begins to cry, thinking about the magnanimity and compassion of the Supreme Personality Godhead for his devotees. And when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was ecstatic. He was like, actually, you say you are illiterate? I tell you, you are the most literate, you are the most knowledgeable person because you have understood the essence of Bhagavad Gita. You have understood the message of Bhagavad Gita. Isn't that interesting? He had no caliber, but he was a man of character. What is a man of character? Integrity, where he followed the instructions of his spiritual master. Lord Shri Krishna Bhagavad Gita, in Bhagavad Gita 10, chapter 10, verse says, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayantite. If you are sincerely and seriously trying to follow the path of devotional life, which has been given to you under the guidance of bona fide Guru, Dadami Buddhi Yogam. I will give you the intelligence by which you can come to me like that. So there are many, many examples can be given. I mean, just to quote another example that comes to mind, is from, I believe, Serbia or Siberia, not Serbia, Siberia, on the northern part of Russia. Very, very is most of the time filled with covered with snow. So in a very particular town, for the first time, our book distributors, devotees who distribute Bhagavad Gitas, they went for the first time in that town. The town was dominated, or more or less, it was a Muslim town. Most of the residents were Muslim there. So earlier they were hesitant, thinking that they already following a certain religion, they may not show interest. Yet they decided, okay, let us try. Nobody has gone, we'll just go and try. So these two brahmacharis stood literally whole day, and nobody came to even speak to them even once. What to think, what to ask about purchasing a book. Nobody. Finally, after standing for hours, they became tired. They thought, okay, no point. Let us go back. And when they just turned back and were walking towards their van, suddenly across the street there were 3, 4 ladies, old ladies, were standing, and one of the lady was there looking at these brahmacharis for a long, long time. And then this old lady, when she saw that these men are going away, she came across the street, came in their direction, called for them, and when they heard somebody calling, they turned around, and this lady came to them, and she said, "Do you have Bhagavad Gita?" The brahmacharis were surprised, the devotees. How come this lady? I mean, she's entirely foreign culture. Nobody ever has come here. Nobody knows about Vedic culture, what to speak about Hinduism and whatnot. And she's asking Bhagavad Gita. So the devotee took out a copy of Bhagavad Gita. He said, "Are you asking about this?" She said, "Yes." He gave the copy of Bhagavad Gita, and the lady with tears in her eyes says, "I'm sorry, I'm a very, very poor woman. I don't have money. But whatever savings I have brought it for you." And then from underneath her chadar, she took out a pouch which had all her, little coins which she was saving or whatever saving. She said, "This is what I have. I hope it will suffice for the cost of the book." The brahmachari said, "No worries. Whatever you give will accept it, mother. But may I know, how did you got to know about this book?" You know what this lady said? She said, "As such, I'm uneducated. I have no idea about anything. But for a long time, I had that spirit wherein I was praying to Allah every day, every night, my dear Lord, I want to know more about you. I want to know more about yourself so that I can love you. I can develop my faith strongly. Please, please guide me." She said, "I've been praying like this. And last night, Allah appeared to me in my dream. And He spoke to me. And He said, tomorrow there'll be 2 monks coming to your town, standing at this particular corner of the street. They'll be wearing a saffron colored dress, and they will have a book which will tell you everything about me. And the book's name is Bhagavad-Gita. When you see them, go and ask them copy of Bhagavad-Gita. They'll be very happy to give you. And this brahmachari was literally about to faint. They thought they were great book distributors. They realized Allah is far better book distributor than them. He's coming in the dreams and telling, take a book of Bhagavad Gita. Again, I just quoted the story that came to mind in terms of character and caliber. That's the point. Is who can understand is about caliber. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, the real method of acquiring spiritual knowledge is the cultivation of divine qualities, of which humility is foremost. Very profound example is given in scriptures, which is said, a man of knowledge is humble. Just like a tree which is laden with fruit always bows down. Yes, you see, is always bent down because the weight of the fruits, it always bows down that way. Similarly, a man who actually has a real knowledge is genuinely humble. But a tree without a fruit stands erect. Yes, that is a situation of a proud man. Who is a proud man? Who actually has no value or no education, no knowledge, I mean to say. Who is a proud man? Who has no knowledge. So knowledge actually makes a person humble, not proud. When a person understands, for example, I'll give you my own personal experience where I really, this particular thing makes a lot of sense to me. When for the first time I went for Badrinath Yatra, we took our congregation of Badrinath trip some years ago. So it was at Badrinath. I was standing early in the morning around 4:30 at Badri Vishal temple. It was not around 4:30. It was around 5:30 when the sunrise began to happen. It was around 5:30. I'm right now at the Badri Vishal temple, at the courtyard of the Badri Vishal temple, which is surrounded by valleys. And right in front is a huge Himalayan mountain, huge Himalayan mountain. While sitting there, I was sitting behind and chanting. I was looking at this huge Himalayan mountain, and I was, just thinking about it, how tiny I am, how tiny. Of course, you live in city, you see tall structures. I lived in America, I saw big, tall structures, but nothing can be compared to the Himalayan peaks. They are the tallest, trust me. When I saw that, I realized how insignificant is my position. And that is a time I realized when we actually know the glories of the Lord, when we have really cultivated knowledge, when we understand the opulences and the glories of the Lord, at that point of time we would certainly become humble, because there is nothing about us of which we have to be proud. It's like about us, everything is like borrowed, because we depend on everything that Lord gives us. The body is a gift of the Lord. Mind, intelligence is a gift of the Lord. This whole world which we are trying to manipulate is also the energy of the Lord. So that's the point about it here. So humility is foremost. Even if you don't have humility, we cultivate humility by taking guidance, bowing our head, following the instructions of Guru. And when we hear from him, when we follow his instruction, then genuine humility develops. That's the point. Second, when we commit to spiritual lifestyle, then we simultaneously develop divine character. So that's the second point here. Prahlad Maharaj says in Srimad Bhagavatam, Yasyasi Bhaktir Bhagavati Kinchana Sarva Gunestatra Samasuta Suraha Harava Bhaktasya Kuto Mahat Guna Manoratena Siddhavato Vahi. Yasyasti Bhaktir Bhagavati Kinchana. Whoever engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead very quickly develops all the divine qualities. In fact, all the devatas descends in the body of that personality. And that is the point. So when we commit to a spiritual lifestyle, we develop spiritual qualities. And to commit to spiritual lifestyle, we have to follow the principles of humility, where we're willing to listen and follow a bona fide, genuine sadhu. So next in this series of verses, Lord Shri Krishna defines 20 items of knowledge, which we will not have time at all to discuss. This is a subject matter which we elaborate in the next course, which is called as Gita Live, where we study details of in-depth study of Bhagavad Gita. But this is mentioned in 13th chapter, verse number 8 to verse number 12. So kindly read it as a homework. Very, very profound and beautiful purport here written by Srila Prabhupada. which defines the actual meaning of these words, which is quite different than the Oxford Dictionary meaning. All right, so please do read it out. I'll just read out the names: humility, mindlessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, acharya, upasanam, taking shelter of guru, socham means clearness, sthairyam, sthir, atma vinigraha, self-satisfaction, satisfied, indriya artheshu, vairagyam, detachment from sense objects, then anahankara, no false ego, janma mrityu jara vyadi, having a knowledge about it. This is called, aware of this evils. Asakti, not asakti, detachment, no entanglement, and then even mindedness, okay, samekritva, like that. And then unalloyed, ananya bhakti, that is the most important quality. Then aspiring to live in a solitary place, which means giving up bad association. Detachment from the general mass of people, which means seeking out the association of devotees. Accepting the importance of self realization and search of absolute truth. These are the 20 items of knowledge. I just read through it because it will require a lot of time to go one by one. But please read the purport of Prabhupada for this set. So, having described the Kshetra, Kshetragya, and the Jnanam, the process of knowledge, now Lord Shri Krishna begins to talk about the next subject, that is Gneyam, which means the object of knowledge. What are we supposed to learn about when we study? And that brings us to the third section of this chapter 13, titled as Soul and Super Soul. Very, very important section. This is one section of Bhagavad-Gita which have led to debates for a long, long time. Debate between the personalists who strongly believe there is a soul and super soul, where between versus the impersonalists who say soul and super soul both are one. We are Aham Brahmasmi. We are that supreme Brahman. There's no difference between Jivatma, Atma, and Paramatma. However, the path of personalists, they, as Krishna explains actually very clearly, Atma and Paramatma are two different. However, impersonalists misunderstands. Why they misunderstand? Because of their envy towards the Supreme Lord. They don't want to acknowledge the presence of the Supreme Lord. They want to usurp that position, claiming that we are Lord. So they say, I am Narayan, you are Narayan, everyone is Narayan. That's the point here. So in verse number 13 to 19 is what is being discussed. So object of knowledge, soul. What are the features of soul? 13th verse of this chapter describes it is beginningless. Krishna says, Matparam, it is always dependent on me, under my shelter. Because Krishna explains in 7th chapter, verse number 5, 7.455, that there is a superior energy, Arjuna, and that superior energy refers to the living entity. They are my energy. So under my shelter, and is beyond the material cause and effect. It's not the creation of the material energy. It's a creation of me, spiritual energy, that way. And what will happen if one understands the subject matter of soul? Krishna says he will become blissful. He'll be happy. That is the point is being mentioned. The next, Krishna explains the knowledge about the super soul. And features of super soul, Krishna says, omnipotent. You can say all powerful. Like he can accept our offering. To give an example, many times people ask you, offer bhoga to deities. Does your deity honors? Yes, deity honors. Krishna acknowledges. There was this devotee, son of Mukunda, Raghunandan, and it's a long story. We don't have time to go into details of it, but the gist is his father had went away. The mother asked her son, please go and offer to the deity of Govinda. I believe they had Gopinath, deity of Gopinath at your house, in your house. Go and offer in the absence of father. So he went and offered. He was a very young boy, offered, rang the bell, came back, and after 15 minutes, he went to collect the offering, and he was shocked. Gopinath have not eaten anything. Everything is on the plate. So Raghunandan began to cry, my dear Lord, my mother and father would punish me. They asked me to feed you, to serve you. I brought it and you have not eaten anything. You're the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You're supposed to know how to eat. Am I supposed to teach you that? Please, my dear Lord, eat it. And he began to plead, if you don't eat it, my mother will punish me. And the Lord actually walked down or climbed down from the altar and ate everything from the plate. Raghunandan was so happy. Lord finally ate. He took the empty plate, brought it back to the mother. Now, mother had a different understanding of what's going to happen now. So when mother saw the empty plate, she was shocked. Raghunandan, you have become so naughty. You ate the prasadam, you ate the bhoga of the Lord. Raghunandan said, Mama, Lord Gopinath ate it. Mother said, how is it possible your father had been offering all this while he always bring the plate as it is? How come he can eat like this? So anyways, the long story short, finally Mukunda comes back and he asks Raghunandan, offer again. And he hits behind the curtain and he sees how when Raghunandan preaches to the deity, deity actually comes down and honors everything from the plate. So this is one example. So it's not that until unless Krishna comes and personally takes the bhoga from our plate, it means Krishna has not eaten. It's not like that. Brahmaji explains in his Brahma Samhita prayer that Krishna can perform any action from any of his senses. In our case, we can only eat with our mouth, but in the case of Krishna, Krishna can eat from his eyes. So, which means if you bring a bhoga in front of it, just by his glance, Krishna eats. And what he eats, Krishna says, I accept your bhakti. Leave the grain for you because I don't need the grains. I don't have a material body. Your material body needs it that way. Second, he hears to our prayers. Isn't it Draupadi's prayer, Gajendra's prayers? She sees all our activities. As a super soul, he's looking at every single desires of ours. And, it said sun and moon are two eyes by which Krishna knows what all actions we have performed. And our Yamarajji is given update about everything that you and I do. That's the point here. And many others. That's why he's omnipotent. And then Krishna is explained the super soul is all pervading as the universal form, the Virat Roop, and the example is of sun. Just like sun is situated in one place, by sun rays, it is all pervasive. Similarly, the Lord is in spiritual world, but by his energies is all pervasive. These are some of the features of super soul which are described. Then further qualities of super soul are given as he is transcendental, which means he does not get affected by summer, winter, happiness, sadness, defeat, or victory, like that. He is beyond sense perception, cannot be seen by the naked eyes. Undivided example of sun, which means Om Poonam Madah Poonam Idam Poonat Poonam Mudachyate Punasya Poonamadhaya Poonameva Vashishyate. This is a verse quoted in the invocation of Ishopanishad, which means this whole material creation and the different worlds are manifesting from the absolute truth, yet he remains complete in himself. He never gets divided. If in case you have to give me 100 rupees, you're short of 100 rupees. In case of the absolute truth, he can go on creating, producing unlimited worlds, but yet he remains a complete unit. That is the meaning of undivided. So the question arises, how do I understand the object of knowledge? Which means how do I understand the subject of soul? How do I understand the subject of super soul? Prabhupada writes, this is quotation from 3rd Canto, 22nd chapter and the 5th verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. Somehow or other, if one meets a saintly person and achieves his favor, then the entire mission of one's human life is fulfilled. Just like Srila Prabhupada's Abhay Charan, a young man in the 1922, he met Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur and his life changed. And that Abhay Charan day, after a few decades, became Srila Prabhupada, Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who traveled all over the world. And it all began with meeting with a bona fide guru. That's the point here. Just to give you an example, not only about this, even the power of Srila Prabhupada's writing. There was a medical conference back in America. This was sometime, I don't remember the year. So the prominent doctors from all over the world had assembled there at that point of time. And our book distributors, devotees were there distributing Bhagavad-Gita. So some Bhutanis, people from Bhutan were there, some doctors. So one of the devotee approached to him and he said, Bhutan, I believe the religion is Buddhism there, official religion. So one of the devotee, knowing that, he reached to that doctor. When he said, I am from Bhutan, he said, oh really? I have a book for you, which is written by Buddha. The Bhutanese began to scratch that, which book Buddha write? And he took out Bhagavad Gita. He said, see, this is Bhagavad Gita, which was spoken by Buddha. Now, Buddha is one of the incarnations of the Lord. So in that way, he didn't lie. So he said, oh really? I didn't know that. So he purchased it. But in hurry, he had taken a copy of Hindi language rather than the English language. So he didn't open it. He came back to Bhutan. When he opened it, he realized it was actually Hindi language, not an English language, which he didn't understood. And he had a friend who knew Hindi, who was an Indian but had shifted to Bhutan, and he gifted that copy of Bhagavad Gita to him. This man read Bhagavad Gita and he caused a revolution in Bhutan, and that is how Krishna consciousness began in Bhutan. Now we have many centers in Bhutan. It all starting with association of Srila Prabhupada through his books. So that's the power of books in that way. And now we come to the last section of this chapter, which is indeed the most important, where E of our acronym WISE stands for enjoyer, from verse number 20 to 35, wherein the discussion is on the subject matter of Purush Prakriti. Purush means who enjoys, Prakriti means who gets enjoyed. So the question is, who is the real enjoyer? Every living entity in this world is trying to control and enjoy. That is the position of it. But are we really the enjoyer? Chitraketu Maharaj, Srimad Bhagavatam, I'm just quoting it, is one of my favorite verses. He says very, very interesting thing. He says, Samsara chakra etasmin janturajnana mohitaha brahmayam sukham cha dukkham cha bhunkte sarvata sarvada. Deluded, agyana mohita, bewildered by ignorance, the living entity, samsara chakra etasmin, he gets he gets bound into this wheel of samsara, which means birth, death, old age, and disease, because of his ignorance, and he keeps on taking birth again and again. Brahmayam sukham cha dukkham cha, and in his life, sometimes he gets happiness, sometimes he gets misery. Like this, he keeps on hovering into this material world. Sometimes going to Brahmalok, sometimes going to Patalok. Like this, just like a person, if you're living in a 14-story tower, you climb up in, then you walk down in the morning, then you come back from office, again you climb up. Similarly, living entity keeps going up and down in the 14 planetary system of this universe, like that. And Bhunkate Sarvatra Sarvada, and that is what is happening with living entity at all times. He is going through the cycle of samsara, like that. So the question is, now we're going to begin the series of questions here. Who is the real enjoyer? Many times people say, what's the difficulty? I'm enjoying my life, isn't it? So here's a photo of Steve Ballmer, ex-CEO of Nokia, during a press conference in 2013, where he announced the sellout of Nokia to Microsoft. The value of Nokia company just some time ago was valued to be $50 billion. When it was sold off to Microsoft, I believe it was around $8.5 billion. And Steve Ballmer, with tears in his eyes, he said, we never did anything wrong, but we failed. So the point is, despite making all the efforts to enjoy, yet there is suffering. Why people? Probably he was at the pinnacle of his career. Nokia, I mean, who doesn't know Nokia from the 2000s? Isn't it? Now you may have MI, Chinky Pinky, some other phones in your pocket, but who doesn't know Nokia? If you talk about mobile phones back in 2000, there was only Nokia, and particularly with those Nokia's eternal phones, who never die. You throw them from the sky, also they'll bounce back and never break. If you remember those Nokia X1, X2, right? Those were the series that time. Anyways. So what is the difficulty? Why can't we really enjoy? So here's my question. Even if you want to enjoy forever, the point is resources are limited, isn't it? And if resources are limited, what happens? Then there is competition and exploitation. So how can we? So Nokia, within a short span of time, lost the market, not understanding what's happening, and suddenly Samsung had taken over. And primarily, Apple had actually taken most of the market share. Then Google, Samsung took over the market share. Then somebody may say, all right, what if I have unlimited resources? Even if you have unlimited resources, you cannot enjoy it forever, because you grow old, your senses becomes weak, so it leads to frustration and dissatisfaction. Look at anything. Let me just ask a simple question to all of you. Maybe you can reply with yes or no. Let's ask this thing. Sorry, I got distracted with some comment. I was saying, frustrating and discouraging is, or disappointment is, think about anything that you had longed in your life. Let's say you wanted to purchase a particular smartphone which you really liked, maybe a car, or maybe a house, anything. And tell me, after purchasing it, after a short while, did you still feel that sense of joy that you had imagining it? That if I would have it, how much I would be happy. You got my point? Before you had that object with you, you had imagined a happiness. If I have it, I'll be so happy. But my question is, after you got it, were you ever happy? Even if you were happy, were you happy forever? Or did you felt, oh, can I change it? Now it doesn't look that great. Maybe I should get a new phone, new car, new apartment, XYZ, different things. Yes or no? Think about it. So that's a point here. That's the reason a living entity, the crux of the discussion is actually a living entity cannot be happy exploiting the material nature, because that is doesn't belong to the living entity. It is a super soul who is actually the Purusha, the real Purusha and enjoyer. So question comes, how do we really enjoy? And Krishna gives an answer, living entity is my part and parcel. If you want to enjoy life, this is a secret given by Narad Muni in Srimad Bhagavatam. He says, Yatha taroramur nischanena trapyanti taskanda bujopashakha pranopaharaccha yatendriyanam tathaiva sarvaranam. If you want to nourish the branches, the fruits and the leaves and the flowers, where are you supposed to give water? You're supposed to put water on the roots, not on the branches or the leaves or the twigs. And that is the point. If you water the roots, the whole tree is nourished. If you serve Krishna, that's the time when our senses get revitalized, nourished, and become blissful. And that's the point here. Second question, why do bad things happen to good people? In other words, who is responsible for our suffering? We have discussed the subject in detail in our previous series, Insights from Bhagavad-Gita. I'll just give you a little synopsis of it. And very interesting verses are here, where Krishna talks about Purusha, Prakriti, and their union. Now, we know about relationship between Prakriti and Krishna, where Krishna says, Devi Eshu Gunamai, 7th chapter, it is my energy. Now, what is the relationship between the material nature and the Jiva? Krishna says, both of these, material nature and living entities, are eternal. They are my energies. But the fact is, I am the enjoyer, I am the actual controller, but the living entity is trying to imitate my position or take over my position. And that is the cause of his all suffering. So, question comes, if that is the case, what is the purpose of material creation? I believe I had asked this question to all of you in the beginning, and here is the answer. What is the purpose of material creation? Srila Prabhupada describes in the 20th verse, to give living entities a chance to reform their rebellious behavior and return back to the spiritual world. We have discussed this before also. Our material world is a university where Krishna himself has established a system of education known as Guru Parampara. If you remember from the 4th chapter, we have discussed about Evam Parampara Praptam in that context. So that is the purpose, because everything has its purpose. So the material world has its purpose, wherein we are supposed to reform our character and behavior so that we can go back to Godhead. Historically, if we are still here, it means we have continued to fail. We have not passed or graduated. In all the previous lifetimes that we have lived, we must have failed. That's the reason we all are still in this material world. And therefore, Krishna says, Arjuna, do not take the human form of life lightly. Make sure in this lifetime you understand the goal of human form of life and do accomplish it. Next, the jiva in this world, further discussion is there. Cause and effect are both handled by material. We are discussing the question of why do bad things happen to good people. So the relationship between Prakriti and Jiva has been described. And the reason why we are suffering is because we are trying to take the position of Supreme Personality of Godhead. That was the first point. Second thing, people say, we talk about this victim mentality like that. So Krishna says the cause and effect both are handled by material nature, which means, to give an example, nothing happens by chance as propagated by some scientists. Whatever is happening is an effect where the cause is our action, action propelled by our desires. Whatever is happening around us is an effect. The cause is actually our desires. So, cause and effect are both handled by material nature, which means the desire is fulfilled by the material nature if it's been sanctioned by the Supreme Lord. We have discussed in the fifth chapter. And effect, which means the result, the circumstances and situations around us are also created by the material nature, and that is why that is what meant over here. It also establishes the law of karma. For example, we have a body. What is the cause of it? Is our desires to enjoy in this world, because of which we are again given another set of body. That's the point over here. So, what is the actual cause of everything that is happening around us? Srila Prabhupada writes a very, very beautiful point in the purport, and Prabhupada says, the living entity is blessed or damned with circumstances according to his past desire and activity. According to one's desires and activities, material nature places one in various residential quarters, which refers to the species of life. The being himself is a cause of his attaining such residential quarters. Somebody has taken a birth as a human being in a male and female body or residential quarter. Somebody has taken a birth in a body of a dog. One placed in some particular kind of body, he comes under the control of nature. Which means somebody takes birth in the body of a dog, then he would be forced to act like a dog. At that time, the living entity has no power to change that law. If you've got that residential quarter which is followed by certain laws, we cannot change that. Suppose an entity is put into the body of dog. As soon as it's put into the body of a dog, he must act like a dog. He cannot. So effect is the body. One of the effects. What is a cause? Is our own desires and past activities. That brings us to the third question. I'll just take 5 more minutes. I guess we are short of time before we conclude for today. By the way, we are giving you the summary of complete Vedic knowledge. It is meant to be a long discussion, but still we are trying to cover up in 1 hour. Where is my freedom? Do you really have freedom or are in bondage? In other words, whatever you feel like, can you do it? Is it possible? There are so many laws of the state. How many of you can walk outside of your house without a mask? Raise your hands. Is there a restriction or not? So, in this context, that's a joke, by the way. Here, in this particular section, Lord Shri Krishna talks about how the modes of material nature binds and affects the psychophysical nature of a living entity, which forces or compels him to act differently in different situations. And this particular verse becomes the foundation of the next chapter, 14th chapter, which is a very exciting chapter we'll be discussing tomorrow, which talks about our psychophysical nature, psychology, and how to determine our own future based on how we are acting today. We'll discuss that tomorrow, nonetheless. And we also talk about leadership models and all that in tomorrow's discussion. So Krishna explains here, at all times, a living entity is dependent on the material nature. And because of the influence of the material nature, the living entity cannot act freely. He's always under the burden of mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And not only that, living entity is not only dependent on the modes of material nature, living entity is always dependent. Let me ask this question to all of you. How many of you control your breathing? Can you tell me how many of you have, how many times you have breathed since the time session has started? If in case you're the controller, you should know that. How many times have you blinked? How much amount of blood has been pumped by your heart? How much amount of oxygen has been, absorbed by your lungs? How your liver is filtering whatever the process. How much control do you have on your body? Think about it. Actually, hardly. And this particular verse is actually the basis of our whole mind management course. But we don't have time to go into details. So, but the point is, we actually medically, They call it voluntary. Involuntary, we only have 5% control on our body. 95% activities of our body are done involuntarily without our knowledge. So how can we say we are a controller actually? Or where is our freedom? So very beautiful verse, 23rd verse, where Krishna talks about it is a super soul who is the overseer, Upadrashta Anumanta Bharta Bhokta Maha Ishvara, who overseer, who sees everything, who permits everything, and he is the supreme enjoyer, which means it is he who is managing all the functions of the body in terms of he is the permitter and overseer. According to his desire, according to his direction, everything else in the body is functioning on its own. Otherwise, is not possible. Let's come to the fourth subject matter, the three doers. We have already discussed the subject matter in the fifth chapter. So I'll just give you the summary of it. Krishna explained that there are three doers, not one. So please do not take complete credit of whatever you do. You only have a right to take one third credit. So which means two-third credit or the 2-3 results of your work you can give in charity to Krishna conscious activities. Okay. So three doers are there, which talks about soul, it desires, as Krishna, a super soul, sanctions it, and finally material nature fulfills it, and the super soul sanctions it based on our karmic account. So we had given an example what happens in case if it gets sanctioned. So jiva desires, which is being heard by Ishvara as super soul based on karmic credit, super soul sanctions, rejects. If in case it's sanctioned, then Ishvara, super soul, gives order to the material nature, which is his energy, which is prakriti, to fulfill that desire of jiva by creating a situation, inspiring the mind and intelligence in the right direction and engaging the body to fulfill that desire. That's the point about it. Jiva becomes temporarily happy, but desire is never satisfied. The moment your desire gets fulfilled, then there is another desire. Like that, the journey continues. And what happens when the desire is not fulfilled? When desire is fulfilled, there is a frustration. When desire is not fulfilled, still there is frustration. In either situation, there is frustration as we are trying to fulfill our material desires. After this, Arjuna pondered, my dear Lord, how would a common man understand all this wisdom? All of you, we all are able to understand because of the beauty of Prabhupada's purpose and simplicity. Otherwise, not that easy. So Krishna says, how do you understand? Bhakti is the easiest. And if you want to understand it, the foremost we have to do is take shelter of a bona fide guru. Hear from him about the science of self-realization, which is being discussed, and follow in his footsteps. So, in other words, we have to create a culture of hearing where every day we hear about the message of Bhagavad-Gita, the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. Like that, our faith increases. So, how does it work? We hear. By our hearing, we acquire knowledge. By knowledge, our perceptions of the reality of world changes, because by hearing we are cultivating transcendental vision. And that brings us to the last question in this particular subject matter, that is the vision of a transcendentalist. So in this chapter, the Lord has described how to understand Purusha, Prakriti, Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Jnana, Gneya. Now he will describe the vision of one who can understand all of these in the right perspective. And who is this true seer? Krishna says, can distinguish between the spirit and matter in all circumstances. Fifth chapter, verse number 18. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne. He is the actual seer. Who is the actual seer? Who sees the truth? Who sees the difference between the soul and super soul? And he sees it is actually only the body that is acting. The soul doesn't perform any activity. Finally, in the last 4 verses, Srila Prabhupada or Lord Shri Krishna talks about the activities of the soul, where Krishna says, hey Arjuna, the soul does nothing, nor does it mix with the body, but it does, however, illumines the body with the consciousness. So what is consciousness? Consciousness is a symptom of the soul. There was a very famous doctor, Dr. Gigolo from Russia. He made a very profound analysis, and he said, there is a difference between a living and a dying person. When a person is living, there is a spark in his eyes. When a person dies, he loses the spark. It becomes dull. It's something that you can take a look in case if you have an opportunity to see a dead body. When a person is alive, there is a spark, which is because of what? Is because of the presence of living entity with the present with the consciousness, which illumines the whole body with consciousness. The living entity leaves, the consciousness leaves. That's the reason it is mentioned that spark is missing. With that, we come to the conclusion of this very, very important chapter. Although it's a very difficult chapter, we tried whatever way we could make it easy for you all to understand. Wherein the chapter begins with of six fundamental questions: Purusha Prakriti, Kshetra Kshetragya, Jnanam, and Gneyam. Where Arjuna had made an inquiries like this. These are the basic constituents of Vedic scriptures. A very, very important discussion. Then Lord Shri Krishna began to talk about what is Kshetra Kshetragya. Kshetra refers to the body, and Gnayam refers to the knower of the body. There are two, soul and super soul. Then what is Jnanam? Jnanam refers to the process of knowledge, and foremost of it is humility, character. It is not our ability by which we can understand scriptures, it is our character, and foremost quality of that character is humility. So here Lord Shri Krishna discussed about 20 items of knowledge. Then Krishna in the next section talked about purush not purush niyam. What is the object of knowledge? That is soul and super soul, wherein we discuss the features of soul. Soul is always dependent on the Lord, whereas super soul is swarat, is omnipotent and all pervasive. And finally, the discussion was on who is the real enjoyer, Purush and Prakriti, wherein we saw six questions. Why do bad things happen to good people? Where is my freedom? Like that, there were different questions we discussed. And with that, we come to the conclusion of the 13th chapter. Krishna willing, when we meet tomorrow, we'll have a puppet show for all of you. uh, uh, Not the actual puppet show, but wherein we'll learn tomorrow how each one of us are actually the puppet in the show of the material world, where our life is actually a show of a puppet, where each one of us are being controlled by a puppeteer, which has been identified as Devi Ishugunamai, the material nature. And Lord Shri Krishna in this chapter gives us the knowledge how to break the ropes that have tied us and actually attain freedom. So it's a chapter which talks about human psychology. We're also going to discuss about leadership models, how different leadership model exists in the different situations because it's pertaining to the topic. Like that, we'll discuss that tomorrow. With that, thank you so much for joining us once again. Although I don't know who all are there, I'm kind of speaking to myself looking at the camera, but I believe some of you are still there. So thank you for joining in. Back to our host, Shikhar Prabhu or Madhuri Pasha, whoever are there. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the wonderful session where we could understand the wise questions which were asked by Arjuna to Lord Krishna. For the benefit of all of us, we could also have the understanding of what kind of wise questions we should ask to our Guru, and ultimately don't know whether we'll get that opportunity or not to Lord. Probably that's why we have Bhagavad Gita, so that we can refer it and we can understand all these wonderful wise questions which were asked by the Arjuna. And we can also apply these in our life because they were very fundamental questions like why bad things happen to good people and what about our freedom. So now moving ahead, we have certain questions. So Prabhuji, with your due permission, can we take these questions? The first question is coming from Shrikant Nayak ji, and he's asking that about enjoying and enjoyment, is it because of application of law of diminishing marginal utility? So this is the principle of economics. So Krishna told this economics principle to Arjuna way back 5000 years ago. Prabhuji, you're on mute.
Hare Krishna. Can you say that question again? Because
Yeah.
my knowledge of economics is very poor. That's the reason I joined Brahmachari Ashram to be on the safer side. So, can you enlighten me on the knowledge of economics a little bit?
So Prabhuji, diminishing marginal utility is like your gulab jamun example. When we eat like third or fourth gulab jamun, then we will not be able to enjoy as we are enjoying the first gulab jamun. So Shrikant Naik ji wants to ask, this enjoying and enjoyment is because of the application of law of diminishing marginal utility.
So my question is, now you have understood who is the lawmaker of this law of diminishing, isn't it? That is a Lord only. In this material nature, it always is what you say uh, acts when you're trying to enjoy matter, but not in Krishna conscious activities. It's not that you chant, you become bored. You like to chant more. You like to serve more. For example, Srila Prabhupada, despite traveling all over the world at such an advanced age, yet he continued his trips. It is not that he was really making a lot of money, wealth, or something which was driving him. It's the joy of giving and sharing Krishna consciousness was compelling him, impelling him, propelling him at an advanced age, even with a very, very frail health, weak health, to travel even against the wishes of the doctor just to go and share Krishna consciousness. I don't think so. Any materialistic person could be so much inspired serving the humanity without taking anything from them. Why? Because here Srila Prabhupada was relishing the spiritual bliss which one experiences when they serve Supreme Personality of Godhead by sharing the message of Krishna consciousness. So yes, in our material day-to-day life, this principle definitely holds, but in Krishna consciousness, it always increases. So whatever I understood about economics, I tried to answer. So I don't know if that's correct or not.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for explaining that the spiritual bliss is all above the economic laws or diminishing marginal utility. Moving ahead to the next question. The next question is with by Aryaji. She is asking that it is mentioned in chapter 7, verse number 12 and 13, that even in the mode of goodness, we are not able to understand God. Why it is so?
Because it is still within the material paradigm. The modes of material nature, Krishna says, are my spell of illusion. The person is still under illusion. Only thing is, you're in a comfortable situation where you can understand, but you can only understand with the help of a bona fide guru. As Krishna have established, if you want to know the truth, tadvidi pranipatena paripashnena seva. You have to approach a bona fide guru. And when you follow the instructions of the guru as given in the scriptures, then you're able to transcend even the mode of goodness and come to the stage of Shuddha Sattva Guna. So, mode of goodness, you can say it helps us to understand properly and live a spiritual culture, but it is not sufficient all in all by itself to help you understand Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, without the mercy of a bona fide guru. So the component of guru, bona fide guru, and Vaishnava's mercy is very, very important. That's the point. And if along with that you have a mode of goodness, then it's a very good combination for you to become steady in spiritual life.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Next question has come from Naveen Tahiliani ji. This question is coming from his sister, and she wants to understand the soul and super soul concept. When it is said that every soul is part of the Supreme God, and we should learn to see a part of the Supreme God in everyone, then how can we relate this?
Relate to what?
So, understanding that soul is a part of super soul, whereas super soul is within the each soul.
No, 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 no. Um, this is called as paralysis by analysis. You know, you are breaking down the thing so much that you're breaking your head now. See, the Lord expands as super soul, and from the Lord have manifested Jivatma's soul. So, super soul is one expansion of the Lord, and souls are the energies of the Lord. So, when these living entities come to this world and they're given the bodies, nothing in this world can function without the presence of the Lord. In everything, there is a presence of the Lord because of which this creation is functioning. If you don't believe it, go outside into your balcony. If you have a clear sky, look up into the sky. There's so much cosmic entities. Are you controlling their movements? Who is controlling the movements of those cosmic entities? Even in your lifespan, even if you look back into the histories, hundreds and thousands and millions of years, there's not even a single accident where Earth got distracted from its direction or deviated or ended up into the trajectory of another planet, which so much happens with the human beings, the intelligent human beings. With eyes wide open, they crash into the different lane. Yes or no? So how is it all happening? It's all happening because of the presence of Lord. We have discussed, I believe, yesterday itself, right? And the universal form, when we talked about this creation, there we have quoted the verses for that. So supersoul is an expansion of the Lord, which is there in the body of every living entity, and through the supersoul, our all desires get fulfilled. So that's two different concepts. To help you understand this, there is a verse in Bhagavatam which says, "The Lord exists at three levels. Vadanti tat tattvavidas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmatmeti parmatmeti bhagavaniti shabdate." The first level of realization is to understand the absolute truth is all pervasive Brahman. Second level of realization is Paramatma, the super soul, the localized aspect of the Lord. And the highest level is which Arjuna is having it when he see Krishna as a two-handed form, the personal form of the Lord with whom you can have loving reciprocation. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, next question is coming from Pranav Latha ji, and he wants to understand the difference or relation between consciousness and mind.
Soul is the root of consciousness. ROOT. Root of origin of consciousness. Mind is the root of consciousness. ROUTE. Mind acts as a bridge between the soul and the body. So through the body, the consciousness manifests into the body, and that's how the body performs action. So it's a subject matter in itself. Uh, we'll be having sometime in future mind management series where we do a more analytical analysis, but I hope these two statements gave you an idea. Soul is the root, ROT, and mind is the root, is the way of the consciousness to connect with the body and to perform actions. All right?
Ji, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, there is one practical question by Chandni Khandelwal ji. She wants to know chanting 16 rounds in one sitting and chanting 16 rounds in 2-3 sittings. Does make any difference?
Well, it depends on what's your mood, how much is your attention in your chanting, you know. So it's a subject matter of what's your attention span, how attentive you are, and why you are doing it in different settings. Some people may sit through for 16 hours but may be lost in their own thoughts. So ultimately, Krishna is bhavagrahi, with what mood you're approaching and performing your devotional service. So that's what I can think of, say, at this point in time, what I understand from your question. All right. So try to chant attentively, even if you're breaking your chanting of 16 rounds into different parts. So, however, the general practice, the recommended practice, it early in the morning hours and to chant straight 16 hours is considered more preferable because in the rest of the day you're not in anxiety that you have rounds to complete. And then what happens the rest of the day when you have anxiety to complete your rounds? Already your mind is filled with so much passion, so many things to do, so many responsibilities. That time to focus becomes difficult. Early in the morning you wake up, your day have not started. That time nothing much is there in the mind. You can peacefully do your things before anyone else in the world gets up. When people get up around, you will agree, then we begin to think or plan about our day's activities, which becomes difficult. All right.
Ji, Prabhuji, thank you so much. So, Prabhuji, some of our audience wants to know about the Nursing Chaturdashi significance, which is tomorrow. So, maybe tomorrow during the class, would you like to take some time regarding
Yeah, but
the
I guess I
devotees of
can just
Nursing Chaturdashi?
correct. I can just speak a little bit of it today, also,
Ji,
so that
Prabhuji.
they enter tomorrow's day in the right consciousness. And I believe we still have few minutes before we conclude for the day. So, it's the appearance day of Lord Narasimha. Just like Ekadashi, we had a discussion yesterday. So it's a day of Vishnu, which means it's another opportunity for us to remember the Lord, to serve the Lord. So any of these days, appearance day of the Lord or Ekadashi days, we fast. Tomorrow we fast until dusk, as they say, because of the boons taken by Hiranyakashipu from Lord Brahma or asked by Hiranyakashipu from Brahma, that I may not be killed in the land, not in the water, not in the sky, not by any weapon, not outside, not inside, not here and there. So many things. He literally have prepared his list so thoughtfully just to become immortal. And when Lord Narasimhadev appeared to fulfill Prahlad's faith, when Hiranyakashipu tried all his best to discourage Prahlad from worshipping the Lord, when Prahlad could not be discouraged, Hiranyakashipu became so mad. Hiranyakashipu told Prahlad, Prahlad, you say your Lord is more powerful than I. Does he exist everywhere? So Prahlad said, yes, he's everywhere. He's all pervasive. He's omnipotent. So he looked at the pillar, which was right there. He said, do you think your Lord is on the pillar also? And Prahlad said, yes. Very interesting. Lord always fulfills the words of his devotees. And then Hiranyakashipu said, yes, if he's in the pillar, I'm going to break this pillar, pull him out with his collar, and smash him and kill him on the spot. Now Hiranyakashipu didn't knew that even his words are going to become true, but partially, which means we'll break the pillar, the Lord will come out, but it will be Lord who will be catching him by the collar, smashing him and killing him. So Lord fulfilled his desire also, but not entirely. So nonetheless, that's what happened. He broke the pillar. Narasimhadev came out. There was a fight, and finally Narasimhadev killed him. And that is the day tomorrow. So the act of killing happened at the time of the sunrise, the sunset, and the moonrise. That is called a dusk. So we literally fast until up to 7 o'clock in the honor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, of relieving this whole world from such a demonic force. So Narasimha Dev, Srila Prabhupada, when for the first time had introduced Narasimha prayers, he had introduced by saying that we chant Narasimha prayers to drive away evil spirits and seeking protection for our spiritual life and also for our physical well-being, because if we have a body, only then we can serve the Lord. So we seek prayer that may Lord you protect us, may guide us in the right direction and remove all the obstacles on the path of bhakti. And foremost of all, just like you had pierced open the belly of Hiranyakashipu, you have destroyed Hiranyakashipu. My dear Lord, may you destroy all the Hiranyakashipu-like tendencies stored within my heart in the form of Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Mohammed, Masarya. My dear Lord, may you be pleased for me and may you free me from this Hiranyakashipu tendency so I may follow the path of Prahlad Maharaj and serve you with full heart and dedication without having any material aspirations from you. When Narasimhadev killed Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad Maharaj began to offer beautiful prayers, Narasimhadev said, Prahlad, ask a benediction. Prahlad said, my dear Lord, do you think I'm having a business transaction with you? Do you think I loved you, I worshipped you because I wanted something from you? My dear Lord, I just love you. I don't want anything. And Narasimhadev said, no, for my pleasure you ask, Prahlad. Then Prahlad Maharaj said, my dear Lord, if that is your desire, if my asking you pleases you, I will ask. So Lord Narasimhadev said, yes, what can I do for you, Prahlad? And then Prahlad said, my dear Lord, please forgive my sinful father. Please deliver him. And that's the time Lord Narasimhadev said, Prahlad, because of your example of devotion, I declare whoever becomes my devotee, his 21 generations of the past and 21 generations of the future will all get delivered. And that is all because of Prahlad Maharaj. So tomorrow is the day where we remember this beautiful pastime and pray, make a sincere offering to the Supreme Personality Godhead. May He remove obstacles from path, and may we also get qualification to follow in the footsteps of Prahlad Maharaj and make our best use of this human form of life and cultivating the right desires and spirit to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the right consciousness. So that's the day to reflect upon, and that is what about tomorrow. So if we will have program or not, we'll update you. I really want to have a program, but the catch here is the fast breaking is at 7 o'clock. So can we do one thing? If all of you are still here, I guess I should have asked the host before. Are you all okay if we, rather than having a session at 7, if we do a program at 7:30? Just delay it by half an hour. Will that be okay? Can you, our admin, can you just type a question and show that? If they can say yes or no, if everyone is comfortable, if you all are okay. What about if we start off a session tomorrow at 7:30 and we go up to 8:45? We'll just, in general, we go up to 8:30, but we'll end up 15 minutes before. We'll have a short question answers tomorrow. Although tomorrow is a very important session, maybe we can have it on the next day. Is that okay? If somebody is too uncomfortable, they can say, if in case they have a comment. So far I see people are seems to be okay. So we'll do
Yes,
that.
Prabhuji.
So we'll have that. So all right, Mother Dipasha, I guess I have taken all the questions for today.
Yes, Prabhuji. We have exhausted all questions. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. And we look forward to have tomorrow's session, The Puppets, with the blessings of Lord Narsimha on the auspicious day of Narsimha Chaturdashi.
Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.